Hello, this is Sabata with the Equatorial Advocacy Foundation. I hope you people are doing fine. Today I would like to discuss with you roadmap to secession. Okay. What I will be discussing with you is how to obtain it. All right. What are the things that you want to look for? Which doctrines do you have to visit to get you set properly in the right pathway, the requirements that you would like to adjust yourself into, so that then when you later on bring up a petition to exercise your rights, to self-determine your future on a referendum, and you will get a lot of support. There will be no obstacles to your support, you see. And I'm speaking this only applies when you want to obtain secession peacefully, all right, through the efforts of what's called international community support and referendum for secession, and basically down that route. So I would want to begin by, first of all, explaining very quickly a doctrine called uti possidetis juris. And this is very important because it basically labels your territory, the territory that you are going to be claiming that belongs to you, because it's very important, because it's one of the requirements that you will need to have in order to gain support. You know, the requirements that would warrant support to you is, let me start with that, the requirements actually. The requirements that would warrant support, that is, if you have already established a case of human rights violation to your people and all these kind of things, you know. But there are very important things that you will have to really establish. First is the accepted criteria of statehood were laid down in Montevideo Convention 1933, which provided that a state must possess a permanent population. So basically, fellow Equatorians, you will have to really, I know you are a nation, all right? You are a nation, but it is incumbent upon you to make this very clear to the international community and also international actors and also people outside, the distinction that you are a nation as opposed to also the others who are also built in nations. So definition of your nation has to be done very clearly, and of course that will have to that necessitates that you will have to know how to do this. Okay, that is one. A defined territory. Now this is where the importance of this doctrine, which is called uti possidetis, comes in, because even establishment of your territory has to be consistent with this doctrine, and I will explain this later when I get to it. You need to have a government, all right? Right now, Equatoria, you don't have a government. That honestly, you don't have a state-like structure that can be perceived and will be considered as a government that you the Equatorians, embrace and look at it as a government. You know, you have to identify these things and accept them first before somebody sees you that way. It's just like, for example, me. My name is Sabata. Before you even call me Sabata, I accept myself as Sabata. I identify myself as such. Otherwise, if I don't identify myself, I don't know how to identify myself properly, some other people will start calling me Lado, others will start calling me, you know, Frank. Whoever wants to label me will label me, but I have to be very clear on who I am, my identity. You see, it's very important, and establish that government, and then capacity to conduct international relations, that is resources. You need those resources so that you can conduct trade with neighboring countries and also international countries. This is one of the things that you have to establish. With respect to Equatoria, yes, Equatoria has a population roughly of about 3 million people. Do you have a territory? Yes, you have a territory. Your territory is a territory that was demarcated back when you were under the British administration sometimes back. You see, through a certain process, the geopolitical demographic of Equatoria came to be drawn. I don't have to go through this process, but just very quickly, it's some territories which were referred to as Bahr al-Ghazal, then the territory of the Ladu Enclave, and then some parts from what was referred to as Upper Nile, together made up what is called the Equatoria region, and it was clearly constructed around 1937 by the Governor General of Sudan at the time. His name was Stewart Symes. All right, he came and he did not only do Equatoria. By the way, he actually drew a lot of mappings of the provinces. Otherwise, the provinces, the demarcations were not very clear. But anyways, when the British were giving the independence of Sudan, Equatoria had a very clear map of what Equatoria is, and it is that you go with, all right, as your territory, because the doctrine of Uti what? Let me see. Uti Posidetis. Yes, doctrine of Uti Posidetis. Let me read what this doctrine is saying, so that you will be consistent with make sure you don't have any obstacle when you pursue this. The doctrine of Uti Posidetis Juris is a principle of customary law that serves to preserve the boundaries of colonies emerging as states. You see, during those days when there has been a lot of relationship between what is called colonies and colonials. Colonies are those states that are subjected under authority of colonials are called colonies. All right, one is a colony, many are called colonies. So the doctrine of Uti Posidetis Juris is a principle of customary law that serves to preserve the boundaries. It preserves the boundaries of colonies emerging as states, because after the Second World War, there has been a lot of agreements that has been reached, and at that time, what's called the United Nations came to exist from what was called the League of Nations, with so many agreements that now let us form what is called a global system and a global community, and have what is called the UN General Assembly members, and should adhere to certain principles, and from that time, those territories who were subjected under authority of colonials now had to undergo a certain process in order to become free. Okay, and as they underwent those process, those colonials who had them helped them basically demarcate certain geopolitical demographics. And now this doctrine is saying that those boundaries will have to be preserved. So if like, just for example, when South Sudan was getting its independence from Sudan, it retained the same borders of the 1956 that the British had drawn. So they cannot go out of those kind of borders. This is what this doctrine is saying. So with that being said, I am basically saying, if you Equatoria if you are going to identify your borderline, it is going to be consistent with the border that you had when the British was giving independence in 1956. That border that you had is what you would want to consider, so that it will be in compliance with this doctrine of uti possidetis juris. And there are also some other things that you would need to establish, and which is this is the tricky part. For your case to be strong, you will want to really maneuver politics very carefully and very smartly. All right. First of all, you want to create a situation where, South Sudan is a member of the UN General Assembly, and there are certain doctrines that the South Sudan has to adhere to. Now, a couple of things. First of all, you want to carefully distinct your identity from other identities, so that then you will be able to create a relationship of what is called colony and colonial. You see how that plays. In other words, you're an Equatorian. You want to now distinct yourself, from the identity without what is called Sudan. But you do that very carefully. That does not mean, you're not going to be called South Sudanese. No. You see how it has been played with respect to the relationship between the North and Junubin Yomdak. And even though Junubin was Sudanese at the time, we carried passports of Sudan at the time. Kanu Ismail al-Azhari, wala Kanu Abud, wala Kanu Nimeri, wala Kanu Zor Dahab, wala Kanu Al-Marghani, wala Kanu Bashir. All those were our presidents at the time, but there has always been rhetorics that has been played, you see, especially in the international arena. Al-Assassinu Yahi, those Muslims in the north, these southern Christians in the south, those Arabs in the north, these southern Christians in the south. This kind of rhetorics creates what is called a distinction in identity. It is those them versus us, they versus those guys. You see, you create a distinction. And what made it easier is also because those people are light-skinned and we are dark-skinned, so it kind of makes it easier to carry that propaganda out through social medias. And of course, countries like the US also played a very big role in making such kind of distinction of such identity, because at the time Sudan hosted Osama bin Laden. Sudan was against the state of Israel. Sudan at a point was presenting themselves as an Islamic state, and US just didn't like it, for ideological reasons. And in order to have Sudan pay for that, they also helped the movement of the SPLM to basically propagate out the distinction in identity, and that has played really into how countries ended up supporting the South when the South was lined to go for a referendum and determine their fates, their future. So yes, identity is crucial here. So you Equatorians, if you're going to play this, then there are certain things that you would want to start considering. That is, you start identifying yourself as Equatorians, kind of, and play kind of resentfulness a little to what is called South Sudan, exactly like how we Sudan Yomdak South Sudanese, we have always been, you know, distincting ourselves from Sudanese, and yet we were Sudanese also at that time. But well, this is politics. This is how things happened at that time, and it worked. You see, this is very important. Another example is, they look at the Igbo, the Nigerians. Right now, they are kind of trying to distinct themselves a little from the identity of Nigeria. They are coming clear out that they are the nation of the Igbo of the Biafra state. You see, it's kind of creating that distinction. Look at the let me say, the Kurds, who are in the part of, I think, Turkey and was it Turkey? Yes, and Iraq and Syria. You see, there are 5 places there where the Kurds are there, but the Kurds don't want to identify themselves with the country that they are in. Instead, they want to identify themselves as Kurds. You see, identity is a very important thing. So you Equatorians, you have to start looking at that. You know, don't just, if you really want to consider the element of self-determining your future, you want to start creating such kind of concepts in the minds of people, even of your young ones. You see, you have to be very strategic in creating such kind of things. You have to create that, and once you are successful creating that distinction of identity, then you want to make sure you present yourself as a person who is upheld at the standard of a colony. You see, Sudan, people who are propagating out wallahi stamiruna la dilesek ferasta nasinas stamiruna hatta kan zaman da godile nas regional autonomy gal galas you free in the south, still nas propagated gal stamiruna la dasa inas kotar mar free kan ses stamirunas wala kan mas stamirunas lakin kalam bita istemar oh human rights violation gamal nesato propaganda they worked. So Equatorians, not sure if I want to answer this, but so Equatorians, you will have to start playing this kind of politics. You have to be very smart in playing this kind of politics. Hold on, let me just text back that I will call you back. I will call you back. Very good. So fellow Equatorians, you have to know how to do this kind of games. You know, this is politics. This is how people survive. So that then you will be able to present yourself as the colony. You know, yes, it is true that you have some people who are in the government right now. Makaman the same with the situation betana ma north yomdak. Makan fi junubin fi shamal shakalin fi hakuma. That did not stop the international community from believing Al Assassino really the identity of those in the south is completely different from those in the north, and that those people in the south are being colonized, you see, by the northerners. You see, you have to create all those kind of things now to build what is called a strong case. To build a strong case so that then some of the other UN General Assembly members would support your call when you later on go and put what is called a petition before the head of the state. And of course you will have to do the timing well, because if you don't do the timing well, then the security apparatus will be used against you. You have to make sure you gain sympathy and support of those from outside so much, so that when you come and put such kind of a petition, now when the UN Security Council is going to be used against you, then you will have backing with that NAS. Sudan right now, I mean South Sudan right now, is in a very bad shape, seriously. They are tied to politics. They are in a very, very bad shape. They are under sympathy with that. So much of the strong international players outside. So if those international players really kind of want to suffocate them and say, hey, you know what, you're gonna allow those Equatorians to exercise their rights for self-determination through a referendum, I don't think there is much that Kir can do if you play your politics very well. fellow Equatorians. These are some of the things that I would like to share with you really very quick. I would come again some other time. Let me make that call or return that call. I'll come some other time and continue this discussion with you, okay? And maybe when I come next time, I will give a lot of examples with respect to Sudan and South Sudan. All right, thank you very much. God bless you.